Hi everyone, I'm so glad to see you again. Thanks for coming and joining me today and spending some time with me. Today we're going to just jump right into it. I have 5 things for you to practice today to improve your sewing skills and your confidence in tackling new projects. Number 1, we're going to make a button-up placket. If you have any button-up shirts that only start like about halfway or something like this will be really useful for like button-up dresses, jumpsuits, things like that. So I want to show you how to do that. Number 2, how to do a buttonhole. Now you can do buttonholes with like your automatic buttonhole foot and settings and stuff like that, but I'll show you how to do it more manually by using zigzag stitch and the settings that I use for mine. Number 3, we're gonna do sewing on buttons. Now almost everybody knows how to sew on a button, but do you know how to sew on a button really well? That's what I'm asking. But I just like this technique that I use. It makes it so the button doesn't lay flat with the fabric, and it makes it easier to pull it through and everything. Number 4, how to sew cuffs of your sleeve. I'm not wearing a sleeve that you can see, but some button-up shirts have cuffs and they have a button on the cuff and stuff. I'm not going to show you that way because I prefer not to have that. I like a more rolled up look, and even though it looks cool when you have that, it just makes it so it falls down easier. I didn't want to deal with it, so we're going to show you how to iron and sew and do those kind of techniques. And it's not just on sleeves, but I also added cuffs to the bottom of my project that I'm going to show you. Number 5, I'm going to show you how to do hip pockets. Now, they're not just traditional pockets in the seams of your dresses or skirts or whatever. They're like your actual like jean pockets where they show in the front and you can see a little bit of the pocket on the back. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a pretty simple way, and hopefully you enjoy. Let's go and get started on these things and I'll walk you through it. So take it away, voiceover Annie. All right, let's start off by ironing the front of our shirt where we're going to be putting a placket and ironing our placket band. Now that is cut out 3 inches wide, and however long your placket is going to be, double because it has to go down and then up again, and then I'd leave another inch or 2 just in case. Just some breathing room for you. Now we're going to iron our placket half inch of the edge is folded in, and then we're going to fold that in half. Next, we're going to mark how long we want our placket on our shirt, so you can decide how deep you want it. It doesn't really matter. I made mine, or for your project, you can determine how deep you want your placket, but for mine, I just did 6.5 inches. Pretty basic, pretty easy. And make sure you do all of this on the wrong side of your fabric. Do not do this on the right side of your fabric. That's going to be important later on when we start sewing. Next, I'm going to mark a ½ inch on either side of the line, and then I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch up and draw a triangle. And then we're going to cut all of this out. We're going to go down the front of our placket and then only the sides of the triangle and not the bottom of the triangle. Remember that, it is important. Now, making a placket is not as hard as you think it is. It's actually pretty easy. Next, we're going to sew the placket on. Now you're going to make sure you're on the wrong side of the shirt, the right side of the placket to the wrong side of the shirt. And then we're going to sew down just on that ½ inch fold line. You can see right there, it's pretty easy. Now when you get to that first notch of your triangle, you're going to mark a little dot. You can see it there where we cut into it. Mark a dot, move your needle down, insert your needle, and then you're going to turn your fabric a little bit to get a straight line. Now my camera cut off, and after marking the second dot, you don't see what I'm doing, but you're going to continue in a straight line to the opposite end of your placket, or up to the other side of your placket. So move your fabric, insert your needle, move your fabric, and then sew to the end. And then I just cut off the excess parts of my placket, and here is the first step all done. It's pretty easy. Turn your fabric to the right side up. And then you can see that we sewed onto the wrong side. Look at that. Ta-da! That's important. Remember this. Now we're going to trim the triangle off of our placket and stuff. This is going to reduce bulk. We're also going to trim part of the placket there so it's like a rectangle and the end of the triangle. We're going to trim that off without hitting where we have sewn so that we don't make a hole in our placket. And I'm wondering how many times I can say placket at this point. Next, we're going to fold over our placket onto the right side of the fabric and pin it in place as if it were a straight line. We're not doing any folds. We're not doing anything fancy here. We're just folding it over and creating a straight line. Now your shirt will look folded and everything. You can see that, but the placket needs to lay straight. And then we're going to sew from one end to the other. I put my needle to the left and put it on a 3.5, I believe, just to get a close to the edge of the fabric, or close to the edge of the placket, just to give it a nicer look. Next is where I'm showing you how to fold your placket. Yay! This is where the magic happens. So you're going to fold one side of your placket onto the other, lining up the edges where you have sewn and the edge of your placket, and then it's going to create a little V. And my camera cut out again, and I missed sewing down the placket, but I'm just going to pin it in place, and you can decide how high up you can do a line across. You'll see in other footage a line across, and then you follow the triangle and everything. Next, we're going to do our buttonholes. Woohoo! We're going to mark the center of our placket, which is going to be a 1/2 inch because I did a 1-inch placket. And then we're going to mark where we want our button to sit. And we're going to put our button on and then mark the top and bottom. That will be our guides, the top and the bottom of that. So I'm going to show you how I set my machine. So we're going to start off with it on a zigzag stitch. Then we're going to go to a 0 and a 5, and that's going to be the first part of our buttonhole. Then we're going to move it to between 0 and 1 and go to a 2. And those will be the edges of our buttonholes. And then we're going to go back to a 5 and a 0. And then a 2 and a between the 1 and 0. And that will be what we do for our buttonhole. So we're going to start at our first dot, making sure it's centered, do a few stitches at the 5 and 0, scoot it over so that the edge of that first zigzag is lined up kind of centered. So down till you reach your next mark for your button. Center it, go to your 5 and 0. Do not leave your needle inserted and just start sewing because you'll be off. You have to line up the edge of your zigzag with the center or with the little arrow on your foot of your sewing machine, and then you're going to do it at the 2 and the 0, 1 setting, and then go to the other end. It creates a pretty clean buttonhole. This one got a little squampusy at one end, but honestly, most of them turn out really, really good. This one I messed up slightly, but it looks great. And then you're going to use your seam ripper and cut out the fabric in between that, and then put your button through it just to check the length to make sure it's okay. And then now, as promised, you can see what the finished placket looks like. Next, we're going to just sew on our button. So you're going to mark where you want your button, and then I'm using needle thread. The thread is folded in half and tied in a knot at the end. And I'm going to go through the top 2 buttons about 4 times, or until I feel it's secure. And then after doing that 4 times, then I'm going to go through the bottom 2 holes 4 times. Now we're going to go through the back of the fabric between the button and the fabric, bring the needle up, wrap your button 4 times, and then you're going to poke the needle through that thread that you've just wrapped, and that kind of finishes it for you, and then you can snip it. I found this way to be incredibly secure. I've washed the outfit I made doing this method multiple times, and I have not had any issues with my buttons feeling loose or anything, and I'm constantly undoing them and redoing it because it's a jumpsuit. And now we're going to get started on our cuffs. So we're going to iron what's going to be the leg of our cuff and the cup, or you're going to iron what's going to be like, pretend it's the bottom of a pant leg, and then you're going to iron your cuffs. You're going to fold your cuff long ways together and sew that end up with 4/8 seam allowance. And then now you're going to sew your pretend pant leg together. It's just the bottom of a pretend pant leg, and you're going to sew that 4/8 seam allowance. Next, we're going to do the cuff. So we're going to open the seam and just iron it flat so we don't have any bulges in it. And I know my ironing table's a situation and I'm working on it. I need to get a new ironing board so bad. Anyway, we're going to fold a half-inch seam allowance on the bottom and top of this cuff. Once you've ironed that out, then you're going to fold that in half, matching up the seam allowance together. I'm just folding that in half. Make sure everything is lined up very straight because this will definitely affect the end of your the finished product. So make sure those edges are lined up really, really, really well. I don't know how much I can emphasize that. Line them up. And now we're going to sew that onto the cuff of our pant. So pant right side out. And we're going to line up the seams. And we're going to push the pant into, line it up with the edges of that seam allowance or the hem on the inside of that, which is about a half-inch. So your pant leg will go in about a half-inch. This will secure it and also make it so there's no fraying and you don't have to worry about it falling apart or anything on you. Continue doing that all the way around it. And then we will sew it. I took off the little container on, or the little, I don't know what it's called on the sewing machine, just where you store your needles and everything. I popped that off just so I had the sewing arm so I could insert that into the leg and everything so it went around easier. All right, we're gonna sew. Now I put my needle at I moved it to the left position and I put it at about a 3.5, just so the needle sat closer to the edge of the fabric. And I lined up my fabric, or the edge of the cuff, with the inside of my foot. I don't know if that made any other sense. I mean, some people understand that, but just positioning it. I liked where it sat and I liked the look of it a lot. Next, we're gonna move on to our hip pockets. Yay! So you'll wanna get a pattern for this. This I drafted myself, but you'll have patterns that will have similar things like that. So you'll have the front of your pants, you'll have the back pocket lining and the front pocket lining. First, you're gonna sew the front pocket lining to the front of the pants. I'm showing kind of where the pants were, and then I cut out the notch of where I wanted, how deep I wanted it to show and everything. But we're gonna sew on that edge, just that edge only, and then we're gonna flip it over and iron it. And we're gonna iron it that way once it's flipped over. Did I iron it? I guess I didn't. Oh, anyway, now we're gonna sew on the back pocket lining once it's flipped over and everything. And we're gonna sew that all the way around until you get to where the end of the front pocket lining and the front pants seam ended. If you keep going, you'll get some weird puckers and stuff and you'll snag your pants and stuff. So you just wanna get right to the end of it. You're gonna just sew a J shape. Now I'm showing you where we just sewed. And then we're gonna fold that behind it and then pin the top pieces in place. That top part is where you'll attach it to a waistband, or if you made a jumpsuit like I did, you'll attach it to your bodice. And then we're gonna pretend this is the back of your pants, and you're just sewing up the side seam. And then you've created a pocket. And this is what I made using these methods. This was the first time that I modeled for something like this. So I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you enjoyed this. I forgot what I was doing. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you want to stick around and see more from me, then subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when I post. If you have anything you would like me to try or would like to talk to me, just leave a comment and I'd love to get back to you. So that's all for now. Bye.